Today we're going to be talking about Concord. Concord is PlayStation's new 5v5 live service hero shooter that just had its open beta close a couple weeks ago, and it's going to be launching August 23rd. Now, there has been a lot of criticism thrown at this game. Is it all warranted? Who knows? But I do know that I didn't expect to make a video on this game at all in any way, shape, or form. I never thought I would make a Concord video. But I did play the open beta, and I have some thoughts on it, and I wanted to share them all with you, and just kind of a general discussion on some of the stuff that I liked and disliked with Concord.
Now, to go back in time to when Overwatch first launched almost 8 years ago at this point, me and my friend group were absolutely hooked on the game. We'd stay up late each night playing random quick play matches, we'd do some competitive games, or we would just mess around and do custom 2v2 matches if we wanted to. We absolutely loved the hero designs, the gameplay loop, and things just kind of clicked for us, and the game overall. But, over time the game has changed, and ultimately, I do not enjoy Overwatch at all, pretty much. Especially as a tank player, I think Overwatch 2 has just gotten pretty boring for me. Its heroes have kind of just stayed the same, more or less. There's a lot less playmaking capabilities in the game, and there's far too much power creep. And again, I just don't really enjoy it as much as I used to. And this is sort of why I've been looking for a new hero shooter game to just try out and get invested in. While Marvel Rivals looks like an awesome game, and I absolutely can't wait until it launches next year, playing a new hero shooter that isn't Overwatch is something I'm kind of on the lookout for. And honestly, I will say, playing the Concord beta, I was pleasantly surprised by what I played, and I could see myself playing this game even more. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the first time my partner and I saw the Concord trailer at PlayStation's Direct, we both looked at each other and thought the game looked super mediocre. Just knockoff Guardians of the Galaxy mixed with some Overwatch and some Destiny elements, and without a doubt, the overall marketing of this game since day one, in my opinion, has been bad. Just not very good. No doubt about it. This is why it's so surprising for me to actually say that I really enjoyed the Concord beta and ended up logging over about 15 hours or so during, the 2 days that I played it. I probably would have put more time in with the game, however, none of the progress that you make from the beta carries over into the main game, so I just decided to stop playing and wait for the actual release. And yeah, you heard me right, I'm going to be playing this game when it launches in a few weeks. And I did just want to make a video to not talk about the abysmal Steam numbers or the fact that the robot has pronouns, which, side note, why are we focusing on pronouns in this game? This is literally such a waste of time. People kind of just spend their free time talking about this stuff, but it's whatever. It's your prerogative, not mine. Instead, I actually wanted to talk about some of my feelings on the game itself. For starters, I do enjoy the fact that the game takes a slightly different approach to the hero shooter genre, and to make one thing clear, I am not a big live service person at all. I played Overwatch back when it wasn't a live service game, and once it transitioned into one, I kind of felt like a general shift in the player base and the priorities of the Blizzard team overall. I played Apex Legends when it first came out on PC and liked it, but I don't really play it at all anymore. I don't love Valorant, especially because this is more of a tactical-based game, tactical-based shooter, I should say, kind of like CS, and I don't really like CS. Tried it once, not for me. I did try X-Defiant as well and sort of liked it, but it's way more like COD and it doesn't really excite me. Plus, I thought the characters in X-Defiant were way more generic than I thought they were going to be, and I couldn't really latch on to any of them. Fragpunk seems to be generic on the surface, but I know a lot of people that do love that game, so, can't really speak on that one. But generally speaking, I am so far removed from the live service world that my comparison points between something like Concord and other games is kind of limited to Overwatch and Destiny, which, thankfully, Concord looks and feels like Destiny's PvP Crucible modes, with Overwatch's heroes and abilities-based gameplay. First things first, let's actually talk about my issues with this game before actually diving into anything else. Let's get that all out of the way first. Now, the first thing is that I wish there was a 120 Hz mode, because I realize this game, it's running at 1440p, 60 frames, according to Digital Foundry's video, but it would be nice to have an option for 1080p, 120 frames per second, some sort of high refresh rate mode. I know this used to be more of a niche setting, but more and more people seem to be getting those 120 Hz televisions, those high refresh rate televisions and monitors that are supporting, Xbox and PlayStation games. So I definitely think it would be nice to have at some point, and it is one of the better aspects for me, at least whenever I play something like Overwatch 2 on the PlayStation 5. Next thing is there's this, I've seen this a lot online, and it's totally valid, and even the development team has come out and stated that they're going to be looking into adding this feature in, but they definitely need to have a lever penalty or some sort of backfill workflow in place where, if teams are uneven, if someone rage quits, if someone DCs, having someone to backfill or just fill in for that player, that would be nice to have, right? Because like right now, a lot of players would disconnect or they just would leave the game if we were losing. And then that would be it. It would be a 5v4, 5v3. So yeah, as soon as the teams are uneven, things kind of immediately shift into just you're going to lose. And, that's just something that they have said that they're going to be looking into, and they really should do that. Next thing here is a general note, but the progression itself felt pretty slow. And I think this could be partially because they gated things off from players because it was a beta. They maybe didn't want to give too many of the rewards, during the beta window. So who knows, maybe progression isn't that slow. We'll know more when the game actually comes out. But initially, by playing the beta, the progression itself felt pretty slow. And again, it could be because they gated things off from players, but who knows, right? Next thing is more of it'd be cool to have this, but a kill cam. For me, at least, it's easy for me to detect how I was killed, by who, in what way, right? Like what ability cooldown usage was made, in order to get the kill. It's nice to have it. Currently, there isn't a kill cam in this game. Instead, you just, you die, it cuts to the hero select, and then you have a couple of seconds to pick your new hero. Next is like a small little thing as well, but the ping system is actually tied to the touchpad, which I don't really like. For me, it's not like tactile. I don't like that. And to access something like the scoreboard, the leaderboard to see how you're doing in the match, you actually have to hit the down button on the D-pad. And I actually found it to be very finicky. I'd hit the down button, it wouldn't show the scoreboard, and then I would hit it again, it would show up. So I ended up just changing my control bindings so that the leaderboard scoreboard command would be tied to whenever you press the touchpad down, and then I changed the ping system to one of the arrows on the directional D-pad, which I thought it was a little bit nicer to have. Not a real issue, it's just more one of those things where be mindful. If that also sounds like it would annoy you, just be mindful you might have to retool your key bindings before you actually start any matches up. This does bring me to one of the other bigger issues that I have with the game that I just want to throw out there so that others are aware of it. It's the dodge mechanic. For me, I had to adjust the sensitivity of the dodge roll, and this made the game feel a whole lot better for me personally. So in order to dodge, you have to quickly tap the circle button twice in quick succession on your controller, and that would initiate a roll. But you can actually configure the amount of time that it takes in between button presses to actually activate the roll. You either press the circle button fast in quick succession, or you could do it with a slight delay of maybe a second. And I found that doubling the amount of time in between button presses and giving myself more time between button presses actually made things a bit more forgiving. And for me personally, it made the dodging more consistent. So I recommend go into the menu, change the window of time, the amount of time that it takes in between button presses for the game to detect this as being a roll or a dodge, because it really does make a difference in my opinion. Probably something that you shouldn't have to go into the menu to configure in the first place, but it's nice that it is there because it does, in my opinion, does make a difference. Now let's move on to things that I actually liked, and this is a big one, but I think the game actually feels pretty good to play. I enjoyed how the game felt. I enjoyed how it played. There's definitely a solid foundation here with Concord, and I think only time will tell if Firewalk is going to actually be able to iterate on top of this really solid foundation that they have to create a game that, manages to entice more players to come in and give it a shot, and also just manages to feel a bit more dynamic in the moment-to-moment gunplay. At first, I really couldn't wrap my head around how slow the character movements felt. Coming from something like Overwatch especially, characters kind of float around, jump into the air. It's a very different feel. It's far floatier. The gravity configuration in this game, or the gravity settings, are more akin to Halo or Destiny, just as a note there. But yeah, I really couldn't kind of wrap my head around how slow the characters move. Over time, my brain kind of adjusted to the playstyle of the game. And I would say, again, as an Overwatch player, do not boot this game up expecting it to feel like Overwatch. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in your book, it is an entirely different game, entirely different experience. And that also kind of goes into the fact that time to kill is a lot longer, which I don't mind. I know some people prefer the short time to kill or the low time to kill for things like Call of Duty, but I actually don't mind the fact that it's a little bit higher here. And Concord specifically, I think, feels like a game that benefits from teamwork and working in a group. You really can't just 1v3 the enemy team and expect to win. You're kind of just, you're going to lose. Also, this game is actually incentivizing players to pick up and learn different free gunners. That's what the characters in the game are called. They're free gunners, or your heroes. So you're actually incentivized to learn these different characters as opposed to just having one main or one tricking a character. And I personally like this, but I know I've seen a lot of discourse online, people just mentioning that they don't enjoy this, it frustrates them, because ultimately I think the best way to play this game, in my opinion, is to become well-versed with several characters within the main roster. And again, the more characters you have familiarity with or proficiencies with, this actually ties into a gameplay mechanic, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But it helps you kind of build a stronger portfolio of characters you can play, and ultimately it feeds into a really cool gameplay mechanic. Now, I think the roster itself has some cool characters. I think Hamar, Kips, Itzy, and Lark were some of my favorites, and I like Lark mainly because he's got a spork for a necklace, and he's got like a spaghetti colander on his head. But then you have characters like Jabali and Roka, which kind of seem derivative of other games, and in Roka's case, I feel like she seemed a little unfinished in some ways with her design, but it's funny because I played Roka the most, I think, out of all the other characters in this game, and I think she is probably one of the strongest characters in the entire roster. Now, this brings us to my favorite aspect of the game, and that it has these passive abilities that stack during your gameplay sessions called crew bonuses. And Concord has several role types in this game, each kind of providing you with persistent stackable perks that apply to your selected character throughout the entirety of a match. So let's talk about this because it's not very well explained in the game. I'm hoping that they tutorialize this a bit better in the main game when it launches in a couple of weeks. But if you want to hear what these crew bonuses are and how they relate to the gameplay, let's talk about them right now. Just like in Overwatch, you got like tank, support, DPS. There are different types of roles in this game, and each role type will give you a passive ability that will stack throughout the entirety of your match and essentially will buff the current character that you're playing. So we can see all of the different crew bonuses here lined up, the first being Ranger, which unlocks the ability to have reduced weapon recoil. Wardens give you longer weapon range, which is pretty good for someone with like a shotgun, right? Gives you more weapon range overall. Haunts unlock the ability to have increased mobility. Breachers, which give you a faster dodge cooldown. And then moving over to something like Anchor, you get increased healing received. And then you have something like Tactician as another role. It gives you the ability for faster reload speeds. And again, in theory, you can unlock every single one of these bonuses in one match and have it applied to a single character to buff them into this really unstoppable character, or at least makes them a bit more well-rounded. Because I think some characters lack certain things that other characters are more proficient in. For example, obviously tanks are going to have way lower movement speed than some like really floaty and lightweight character that just speeds around the map. So maybe you want to increase your mobility first to improve the tank's overall mobility. And so it's kind of cool because you can kind of kit out the characters that you really are proficient in with special passives that make your character even more fun to play. And the best way to describe how I played this game, at least, is that I would start off with characters that I enjoyed playing so that I could get their crew bonuses and stack them until I would eventually play as my main or my best hero in the game to end the match with. As an example, I would start out with someone like Jabali, Hamar, or Roka, and I would end the game by playing Lennox, who does a ton of damage. And so I would try and stack up different passives like reducing weapon recoil, improving mobility, and this would just add to his overall kit and make him an absolute beast to play against. And since Lennox has pretty relatively slow movement speed to start off with, I found him more fun to play after I had the crew bonuses to increase things like his movement speed or even his dodge cooldown time. Last thing, map designs, I really like them. I think some maps are better than others, but generally speaking, I like the layouts of the maps themselves, the visual design, the color palette. Some of the maps look absolutely breathtaking, and I really think that they nailed the look of the maps themselves.
Now, one of the major questions regarding this game is whether or not it's worth $40. That's right, this game is $40. It is not free to play. And here's the thing, for me, I think it's worth $40. You get 16 heroes, 6 game modes, and 12 maps up front at launch. And while something like X-Defiant launched with more maps, I think the character variety here is a bit more exciting for me personally. Additionally, it seems like there may be a PvE game component to this game at some point. If you watched the credits in the open beta, there was a section of the credits that said PvE, and there was also a job listing for a PvE centric engineer developer, so there may be a good chance that we're getting something in the way of PvE. I've already been burned by Overwatch 2, so I'm kind of used to this thing if it doesn't pan out. But regardless of whether or not the game mode will come, the team has mentioned they'll be releasing additional game modes, free gunners, i.e. characters, maps, bunch of other stuff down the road, and it's going to be free. Cosmetics are the only thing that you're really going to have to pay for if you want to pay for them, or you can unlock them through regular progression. And here's the thing, while I might be fine paying $40 for this game,
I did ask one of my close friends her and I play a lot of Overwatch together. I asked her if she'd be interested in checking out Concord, and the first thing she asked me was, yeah, is it free? And it's one of those things where it's just a hard sell, I think, for some people because, if it's $40, it's not like it's, $70, but it's still an asking price up front. And I think a lot of people are kind of used to just seeing free-to-play games that really kind of have no entry fee. You just kind of get in, see if you like it, and go from there. I know Overwatch was $60, I think, or $40 at one point, way, way, way back in the past, but the market has changed. Player expectations have also changed. Having said that, I just personally don't have any issue spending $40 on this game. I don't play a whole lot of live service games or hero shooters, and the ones that I do, I almost never buy a battle pass. And I'd much rather spend the money up front for an experience and not really have to constantly pay to unlock a few skins that I care about in a battle pass. Now again, who knows how good or bad the cosmetics will end up being in this game, because something like that does kind of matter to me, but all I know is that there are some people that are fine spending $40 on a mythic Reinhardt skin, and then there's also people just complaining about $40 for a video game. I'm not judging those people that spent $40 on a skin. Everyone's entitled to invest in the things that they find enjoyment in, but just food for thought, mainly. Even if this server shut down in 6 months, I know that not many people like this game, not too many people are going to be playing this probably long term, but even if I get something like 100 hours of gameplay from this game, to me, it's a good time. I'll end things off by saying I initially was not interested in this game when I first saw the reveal trailer. I thought it looked pretty generic, and I felt like this game probably missed its ideal release window. It should have come out maybe 5 to 6 years ago, to be honest. But what I will say is that the game kind of surprised me. After 15 hours of playing, I wanted to play even more of the game. I liked the level design, the art direction of the maps, and I liked the fact that this game reminded me of Destiny 1 PvP. I'm not saying this game is a 10 out of 10, the next greatest thing in the world. I'm just saying it has some issues, but also has some great qualities to it, and I hope other people try the game out at some point, give it a shot, see what it's about, because it might surprise you. Only time is going to really tell if Firewalk and Concord will survive, but either way, I've enjoyed the time that I've spent with the game, and I do look forward to playing more in a couple of weeks.